Welcome to Nevertheless, a show dedicated to organic leaders and leaderpreneurs. Today, you will discover how to discern your essence and live powerful.
Hello guys, welcome to Nevertheless, a show for organic leaders and leaderpreneurs. My name is Bidemi Mark-Mordi, and this is a great show that we have lined up. It's been a very, I don't want to use the word busy, very fruitful time for me. Someone described my season yesterday and she said she sees billows that wave upon wave upon wave. And, I know a lot of you want to see billows in your, in your lives and all of that. But I'm telling you, it's not that fun. You won't believe what I had to do this morning, but I'm not going to tell you. To stay awake, I had to do something I had not done in a long time to be able to stay awake this morning, just to make sure that I get this show off to you. It's been a long, almost 6 weeks of just going back and forth. But I'm grateful that I'm back to Nigeria, and for the next few weeks, maybe a couple of months, hopefully I will not need to be traveling outside of this country, which means I'll probably be sleeping on my bed practically every night, and that's good news for me. How have you been? It's great to always have you, and boy, all of you have gone on rampage. The way you download this show, the way you share it, it's really a season that I cannot explain. But that's to encourage you that, for years you may have been doing something and it seemed like no one is noticing. But when the day comes, it will be waves and waves and billows and billows. So be encouraged, get up today and go and do something again. The day is coming when it will begin to pay off. I want to stop now before we go into today's show, so that will bring a very important message your way. Don't go away, I'll be right back. Hi, I'm Bidemi Mark-Mordi. Many years ago, someone told me, Bidemi, you have a purpose here on earth. And this was at a time when my life was hovering on the verge of breaking because I was constantly and persistently depressed. That statement sent me on a journey to discover who I really am. I discovered that I'm a helper of destinies. What are you good for? Have you ever wondered what separates successful people from average and mediocre people? The one thing I have discovered is purpose. That is why after years of fear and living under depression and depressive thoughts, I chose purpose, and today I live powerful. You want to live powerful too? Then join me on Purpose University, a home for you who want a life beyond the ordinary. To be the best you is what we're about. Welcome. This ride will change your life. Welcome back. Have you registered for Purpose University yet? You need to do that. You need to do that. What more can I say? You need to do that. And then have you registered for the Return of the Helper conference? You don't want to be told about that conference, ladies. Go to the website www.returnofthehelper.com.ng and register. Go to our Facebook pages and you will see the details for Purpose University. Make sure you get in, because remember that until you discover your purpose, you can't live a powerful life. What are we going to be talking about today? Today I want to talk to you about purpose as the universal language. a language that the blind speak, the deaf speak, the mute speak, the rich speak the language of purpose, the poor speak it, the married speak it, the unmarried speak it, the young speak it, the old speak it, presidents speak it, domestic servants speak it. This is a fantastic language, and you want to see how different people, from the word of God, lived their purpose. Some of them with a clear sense that I'm pursuing after something. Others just being at the right place at the right time and taking the right action. But why has it become important for me to talk to you about purpose as a universal language of life? Like I said, I've been traveling for a while, and some of you have been following some of my posts on YouTube, and I have been giving you, not blow by blow accounts, because I tend to be a bit private. I don't want you to know what I ate last night. Forgive me, I'm not that obsessive compulsive about you know my every step, but that's just who I am. But I've tried to carry you along on this journey to tell you bits and pieces and tidbits of what it is that I've had to deal with. But in all my journeys, in all the places that I have been, in all the people I have met, and I have met quite a number of people. If you take into consideration that in a few weeks I'll be 46, I've met quite a number of people. It's just dawned on me now that in all this time, one thing stands out, that it doesn't matter where it is that I'm at, it doesn't matter where it is or who it is that I'm dealing with. There's something that is always very similar, and that is the language of purpose. I've been around Muslims who are not people of the same faith with me, who recognize that this is purpose. I've been around a house help who knew that there was more for her. I had this domestic help years ago. Her name was Linda. And Linda came to work with me, and when she came, I asked her, what would you like me to do? Because she said to me she didn't want to be paid monthly, that she wanted me to accumulate her pay for the entire year and give them to her lump sum, which was not a problem. But I also, because my children were not exactly home, they had all gone off to boarding school, I also was wondering what it was that she wanted to do with the spare time that she had. And so I was thinking maybe she would learn a trade. But I was shocked when Linda said to me, I don't want to learn a trade. I just want to learn how to read and write. That got me wondering, why do you want to learn how to read and write? And she said to me that every other person from her community who's come to work as a domestic help ended up either as a hairdresser or a tailor. And she didn't want to end up like that she wanted to do business. She wanted to trade. And the reason why she needed to learn to read and write is so that she can understand the labels on her products and be able to raise her invoices. I was so tripped that we got her a lesson teacher to help her within the time she was with us to grasp something about reading and writing. So if you take that story into consideration, you will realize that I was pursuing my purpose at some level. Linda, even though she was our domestic help at that point, was also trying to pursue her purpose at some level. That to say that purpose may not be lived at the same level by everyone. Not everyone will get to stand in front of the lights and in front of the cameras. Some of us may have to live behind the scenes, but every single one of us, when we discover purpose, our lives become better. I know that some people will say, oh no, I have all that I need. I have money, I have position, I have status. Because of that, maybe I don't need to discover purpose. But I say to you, it's a lie, because purpose is a universal language, truly. I've been reading a book, The Alchemist, and one of the things that I found out in that book is that they never really called it purpose. They called it your personal legend. And that resonated with me, because what really is purpose? Purpose is that thing inside of us, the tug for more that is saying to us, you can be relevant. When I was reading that book, when I saw the words personal legend, I realized that that's what I've been pursuing. Something that, this is not a legend for the next person, but I'm looking for something that says to me, you are relevant in society, you are relevant to your family, you are relevant in life. That's a personal legend. And from Nigeria to Switzerland to the United Kingdom to the United States of America to South Africa to Zimbabwe to Ghana, some of these places that I've been to, Germany, I tell you one thing is clear. People understand this language of purpose without speaking words. I've been in rooms where nobody said anything, and because you are a person who is living your life on purpose, the other person at the end of the room recognizes you. In leadership, it's called the law of the magnet, I think. Yes, that's leaders. A strong leader attracts other leaders to him. So it's the law of the magnet. And what John Maxwell says about the law of the magnet is, if you are an 8 by your leadership and you walk into the room, like a magnet, if you just stand in the middle of the room, everybody from 7 downwards would gravitate to you. Why? Because there is something, I don't know, some people call it aura. I don't want to begin to try and give it a name. I just call it the universal language that without speaking words we understand. So I have been in places where I don't quite understand the language. But when I begin to talk about purpose, someone walks up to me and wants someone to interpret that they get what I'm saying. So purpose is the language without words. You just know. And I have a number of people in the Bible that I will use to prove to you that purpose is a universal language. But before we get there, we need to take a break and remind you that the Return of the Helper Conference is just less than 4 weeks away. I'd really love to see you there.
My name is Dr. Linda Wallace, and I'm so excited to be coming to Nigeria for the Return of the Helper 2016 conference, July 16th. I'll be joining my sister Bidemi Mark-Mordi and her dynamic team of women. This year's conference will be absolutely pivotal as we learn about the birthing stool and how it can impact our world to align with heaven. Please join me along with my sister, Dr. Anna McCoy from Dallas, Texas. This is Heaven's invitation to apostolic mothers and women across Nigeria as we position ourselves for a new era. Like in the book of Judges, Deborah arose as a mother. She had a direct connection to the wisdom of God, and through her alignment with heaven and relationships with other women, she brought transformation to her nation. The birthing stool will release through us the Father's perspective, encounters with the love of Jesus, and the ministry of the Holy Spirit. We will accelerate in our authority, influence, and power to advance the kingdom of heaven. Return of the Helper 2016, the birthing stool, July 16th. Meet us there. It's going to be an encounter like no other.
Welcome back. So when I'm talking about purpose, the universal language, the first thing I've said to you is that it's universal because every single person is looking for their personal legend. Old, young, fat, thin, white, black, everyone wants to be relevant. So that's why I say it's a universal language. Another reason why I say it's a universal language is it begins with a yearning. And yearnings don't respect people. As a matter of fact, this week I've talked to someone that, you'll be looking from the outside and think they have a fantastic life. And indeed, when you look at the preps and the props, they have a fantastic life. But when we came into close proximity and she started to speak to me, I realized that the preps and the props still don't fill the gap that is within her because she's looking for her personal legend. So why it is universal is everyone has a yearning, regardless of what status you are at. And the thing about being our personal legend is that it begins to scream more. What is the more that you seek? That's your personal legend, and that's purpose. There was a time before I actually started this journey of purpose, in those years of depression, when I hear someone mention purpose, it used to look like it was one very spiritual thing. That they had to put me inside a room for maybe 40 days and have all the prophets and bishops and pastors speak over me and pray over me. And then when I come out, I'm a different person and now begin to live a life of purpose. And I think that that's the biggest confusion that most people have. No, purpose is very simple. Purpose is what you already are and you know to do where you are. The gap
And it's a very narrow gap if you know how to close it. It's just to take that thing and use it for what is required. So purpose is not when your pastor locks you up and begins to beat you over the head with a scripture, or your imam takes you and begin to bat you with, I don't know what they bat people in there. But what I do know is that purpose is a yearning. It's just something that flows out of you. The Bible says it like it says, out of your bellies flow rivers of living water. It's the water inside of you that begins to bubble and wants to come out. And purpose is not exclusive to female, male. I've talked about that. Everyone's version of their personal legend or treasure differs. You need to know that is a highlight as well. So purpose will not be for you what it is for me. As a matter of fact, because I talk to women like practically every week, I tend to say to them that it's okay if you realize that your personal legend is to be able to raise 3 successful children. As long as you are comfortable and nothing else is tugging at you to do that, that's good enough. However, there are some people who have 12 children and every morning they're on the streets starting to look for another legend. Why? Because even though they've had 12 children, it still hasn't filled the void that they feel inside of them. So don't expect that when you begin to live a life of purpose, it will look exactly the way I am living mine. But the thing is, when you get to your personal legend, when it's revealed to you, when you begin to walk in it, you will also know, because a peace will wash over you that you've never had before. So who are these people that I want to highlight for you from the Bible who lived their lives on purpose, even when they didn't know about it? If we go to the book of Judges chapter 6, you see the story of Gideon. Gideon's story is a story I love. I love Gideon's story because the story starts with a very powerless, seemingly powerless person. He was threshing wheat in a cave, and that is a technology that does not work. You don't thresh wheat in a cave. You thresh wheat at the top of the mountain, because you need all the wind you can find to blow the chaff away from the wheat so that you can retain your wheat. But in caves, there's no wind and there's not enough air going around like that can help you willow and get the chaff out of the wheat. So for Gideon to be threshing wheat in a cave said that he, at the point of the story where we met him, he was confused, he was powerless, he was fearful, not many things were going for him. Now all of a sudden the angel shows up and refers to Gideon as a mighty man of valor. Then Gideon started to ask him questions. Say, are you talking to me? Of my father's family, we are this, we are that, we are that. And my parents told me. And I was telling my colleague this morning that, when we were discussing this show, that what had happened was, the reason why Gideon could talk to the angel like that was Gideon had the yearning. Even though he was in the cave threshing wheat, there were times that Gideon thought about what was going on around him, and he felt this ought not to be so. But Gideon was also that person that had accepted the status quo. So his problem wasn't that he didn't have a personal legend to pursue. His problem was he had gotten so used to not being able to move in his personal legend. He probably didn't have a coach and a mentor. There was no Purpose University around him for him to enroll in so that they can tell him the step-by-step things he needed to do. That he just resigned himself to fate. And everywhere I go, that's the one thing I see. You can tell a man will walk up to you, a woman will walk up to me and say, I know something is missing. But you see, after all, I have this. What have they done? They've settled. So Gideon settled. But the day came when Gideon's relevance had to be proved, and the angel came for him. And from that point on, Gideon's story flipped and changed. Gideon went on to be a warrior for Israel, and went on to be an army general, and went on to judge Israel. How does that happen? From the cave to the battlefront. Only the man who has discovered his universal language called purpose can get that done. The second person I want to bring to your attention is Jephthah. His story is also found in Judges chapter 11. Jephthah's story was a bit peculiar. Jephthah was the son that was produced out of a liaison between his father and some concubine somewhere. So Jephthah was the one that the Bible referred to as an illegitimate son, which meant that his father never married his mother. So, but his father liked his mother that much or something, that he was responsible enough to bring Jephthah into the home. Unfortunately, his father died interstate. That is, he didn't leave a will. And the nation gathered and said to Jephthah, you were illegitimate, and for that reason, we need you to leave so that your brothers can inherit. And that was a painful blow for Jephthah. Jephthah got sent away, and Jephthah became what we call a vagabond. He went gathering people, and he trained an army of mercenaries, and they started to fight for a fee. But in all of that Jephthah was doing, fighting everywhere he went and stuff like that, Jephthah was actually looking for his personal legend as well. So we've seen Gideon, who was born in the tribe of Manasseh or Ephraim, I'm not sure which now, and then his personal legend was there. And now we're seeing Jephthah that was an illegitimate child, but he was looking for his personal legend too. A day came too, in all that training, in all that fighting, he was preparing himself without even realizing that he was preparing himself for his day in time. A day came, Israel got in trouble, and they needed a warrior lord. And who did they go and call? Jephthah. And Jephthah says to them, you need to sign an agreement that if I win this battle, when I come back, I will become judge of Israel. And all of a sudden, from the one that was cast out, Jephthah came back to be the one that judged Israel. But there was something peculiar about Jephthah's journey, and I want to point it out. In the rush and in the haste to prove his personal legend, Jephthah made a rash vow. And that's something you need to think about in your push for purpose. Who are you willing to trample on to get there? Remember what we talked about, the things you need to know before you leave this small pond? This is one of those cases. You don't just step out because I know you want to live your personal legend. We all want to live it. It doesn't matter how modest you try to present it. But the truth of the matter is, if that is the thing that gives you your peculiar high, you dream about it, you think about it, you want to do it. But we also need to be careful so that you don't go there to begin to do it like Jephthah did. Because what Jephthah did was he put his only daughter at a risk. But thank God that God had a safety net for her. So we're still looking at purpose as the universal language of life. And this is the Nevertheless show. I'll be right back.
From the moment of conception through the period of gestation, then comes the final push. A new dream is born. Ladies, it's your time of delivery at the Return of the Helper Conference 2016. Come meet God's anointed servant as they help you midwife your dreams in the womb of the Holy Ghost. Theme: the birthing stool. Date is Saturday, 16 July 2016. Venue is the Elevation Church, 3 Remiolo Wude Way, Lekki Phase 1, Lagos. Time is 9 a.m. Ministry: Pastor Mayokun Oriofe, Coach Anna McCoy, Linda Wallace, and Bidemi Mark-Mordi. Register for free on www.returnofthehelper.com.ng. Roth 2016. It's your season of delivery.
I have come to give you glory, to give you worship.
Welcome back. I was talking to you about Jephthah before the break. And now I want to talk to you about Moses, who was born. There was no clear, prophecy over who Moses was going to be. But Moses was born in a time where he wasn't meant to survive. But his parents knew, his mother and his sister put him, all kinds of things happened. Pharaoh's daughter drew him from the Nile. And then he got taken into Pharaoh's palace. He was brought up as a prince of Egypt. But Moses' personal legend would not let him rest. So what did Moses do? At 40, he jumped the gun. He went out one day and saw an Egyptian maltreating one of the Israelite slaves. And he got into an argument with the Egyptians and killed him and buried him. But because it was no time and Moses' personal legend was jumping within him, he had to flee to exile. Spent another 40 years at the back end of the wilderness or the desert. And at 80, finally one day Moses was tending his sheep, and he saw a bush burning that was not consumed. And from that point he received his instructions, and that was how he went on to become the Moses, the deliverer of the children of Israel. Before I forget, let me just quickly point out that the yearning and everything, personal legends come with instructions. Sometimes the instructions are spoken, sometimes they are not spoken. But when it is your instruction, you will recognize it. And I see this every time when I go somewhere to speak. I say something and 5 people come up to me and they interpret the thing that I have said in 5 different ways. Why? Because when you hear the instruction, it will translate for you differently from other people. So we've looked at Gideon, we've looked at Jephthah, and we've looked at Moses. Now I want to take you again, looks like today is the book of Judges. I want to take you again to Jael. Her story is found in Judges chapter 4. Jael is the one who Barak, what's his name? The commander of the army of Israel. Is it Barak or Sisera? Barak, the commander of the army of Israel, God had said to him that he had given the Amalekites into his hand, but he didn't push through because he was afraid. And Jael was the one that ultimately killed Sisera, the commander of the opposing army. But how did that happen? Was it Sisera or Jabin? I'm confused with the names now. But here's what had happened. Jael was a tent maker. She was the wife of a tent maker. So apparently she learnt the trade and she was in business with her husband. They didn't live in the middle of town. They lived at the top of the mountain, the outskirts of town on their own. And Jael was alone at home this day, probably oblivious of the fact that the commander of the army of Israel had been told by God that he would give the enemy into his hand, and he had reneged. And God had announced that because he was afraid that a woman would do what he was supposed to be. Jael was home, and then Sisera or Jabin, please don't hold me to any of, is one of these names I'm sure, showed up at her tent. Why? Because they had a relationship. Her family had a relationship with his family, and he was fleeing from battle, and he thought that if he got into Jael's tent, he would find refuge, and he went in there. But the thing is, that day, what God wanted was to vanquish or destroy this army forever. So he walks into Jael's tent, and she was the one that brought him down. The Bible says she gave him a glass of milk to drink. He fell asleep, and she drove a tent into the temple of his skull, and she killed him. And from that point, her personal legend was revealed. The people did a song about her and Deborah. Now, what's peculiar about Jael? Jael was just doing what she knew how to do where she was. She wasn't going out of her way to be anything. And her assignment came right into her tent. It proves again that purpose is universal, that it's not every time you have to run out looking. Sometimes if you will just be patient and remain where you are and be very good at what you know how to do, your opportunity will show up. So for Jael, imagine that she was not a very skilled tent maker, that she couldn't drive the peg into the ground with one stroke. She would have been the one that was killed that day. But because she was very skilled at what she was doing, the time every other person was using to go about town, she was there tending to her business, learning the ropes properly. When the day of her personal legend showed up, she was very effective. Which brings me to the point that I want to make. Are you effective at what you are doing now? Because a lot of us want to be promoted, but the problem is we are not effective where we are. How do you think you will be promoted when you have not been effective where you are at? I'm still talking to you about the fact that purpose is a universal language of life. And what I'm trying to push to you this day is that until you discover your purpose, there are places you will go in the world and you will not be able to communicate. And the problem will not be a language barrier. It will be that you are not living in your DNA and your core. I also want to talk to you about Ruth. Ruth is different. How does someone go from somebody who married and lost her father-in-law first, and then her husband, then her brother-in-law, lost everything that she owned, had no children? How does she go from a Moabite who God expressly said the children of Israel cannot marry to become the great-grandmother of Jesus Christ? How does that happen? Personal legend. Ruth, even though she couldn't explain it, by the time Naomi was leaving, Moab, to go back to Israel, knew that there was something about her mother-in-law that she needed to follow. And I'm saying that to prove to you that sometimes some of us, and I actually think a lot of us, fulfill our purpose in following other people. So it's not everyone who is trying to discover their purpose and leave it that has to start something. I've said that before in one show or the other, but I need to reiterate again. Even though Ruth was not, because she just said to her mother-in-law, she said, wherever you go, I will go. Your people will be my people. Your God will be my God. Where you die, there I will die and be buried too. She was saying to Naomi, I'm sold out to you. She was comfortable to leave her legend under Naomi's shadow. But see how God used it in the end. She meets Boaz. Boaz becomes the kinsman redeemer. Boaz marries her, and she becomes the great-grandmother also of Jesus Christ. I've brought these 5 or so characters from the Bible to show to you that purpose is universal. Is no respecter of persons, has nothing to do with money, position, power, none of those things. But I'd like to close with my own personal story. One day in 2010, I had been publishing the magazine. I thought that, that was the end all of my purpose. But I went somewhere in Lagos into a bookstore to buy books. And while I was going through the aisles trying to look for the books that speak to me, because I don't go with a list to buy books, because I love books, I just go and I buy whatever book is speaking to me at that point. And I saw this book, white and red cover with the image of the author at the cover. And it was just lying there. It wasn't even very pronounced where they put it. It wasn't prominent. They didn't shelf it prominently. It was one of those books that even the owners of the store were not exactly excited about. And I took a look at this book, and it looked like the picture of the author said to me, pick me up. And this book was titled Woman Act Now by my coach, friend and sister and rocking chair body, Coach Anna McCoy. So I picked up the book and I flipped to the back to see what the descriptive quote was. By the time I read it, I realized that I needed to buy the book, so I bought a copy and I got in the car. The book is over 300 pages, but by the time we drove from the bookstore where I bought this book to my house or to my office that day, a trip that took us about 2 hours, I had read over 160 pages of that book. And on every page I kept writing, this woman is living my life 5 years ahead of me. The end of the story is eventually I contacted Coach Anna McCoy, and within 6 months she was in Nigeria, and the rest, as they say, is history. That one moment that I had been preparing for all my life opened the door to the nations to me. But why was it that easy for me to identify with Coach Anna McCoy? It was easy to identify because purpose is universal. Even though I wouldn't have written the book the way she wrote it in her language, it still resonated with me because purpose is beyond the words that we speak. And today, I'm living a powerful life because I got to that point. Now, don't get me wrong. It didn't mean that I was doing nothing before I got there. But it meant that just that connection accelerated and expanded what I was doing. And by the time I eventually met Coach Anna in person, it turns out that she was exactly 5 years older than me. And that tells you that purpose is universal, because nowhere in that book did she mention how old she was. But I knew, without someone telling me, without even knowing the day I was reading that book, that I would contact her, that she was living my life 5 years ahead of me. So what am I saying on today's show? On today's show, I'm saying that purpose is the universal language of life. And I'm saying that the purpose is the key to more. So it doesn't matter what you think you are looking for. Yes, you will need other people who are universally living. Your hearts will knit together. A whole lot of things will happen for you to get there. But if you recognize that purpose is universal, it means that you can fulfill your purpose wherever you find yourself. Whether you are in the Sahara Desert, you can fulfill your purpose. Whether you are in Iceland, you can fulfill your purpose. Whether you live in Lagos, Nigeria, you can fulfill your purpose. Whether you live in the UK and your nation has just left the EU, you can still fulfill your purpose. Whether you live in the Americans, you can still fulfill your purpose. Why? Because the language of purpose is so universal that you just need to look around you and you realize that every single person that is around you is doing nothing else on earth but trying to ensure that they discover their personal legend. I want to wrap up by encouraging you to step up today. Don't live your life resigned to the status quo like Gideon tried to do. Don't live your life pretending that you don't care about others like Jephthah tried to do. Don't live your life trying to be the savior like Moses tried to do when it wasn't time. Live your life like Jael, who was prepared and somehow recognized her moment even though no one spoke it to her because she was discerning. Live your life like a Ruth who saw the future even though she didn't understand it and she took a gamble. Because what is life anyway? Life is a risk. And you cannot play safe and get there. But in all of this, more importantly, what I'm saying to you today is if you hold on and you never forget that there is something called your purpose, you never forget that there is something called your personal legend, one day very soon, I will be celebrating with you. Till next week when I'll come your way again. Discover purpose and live powerful. God bless you.
Thank you for listening to Nevertheless. For more information and resources, call 0813-360-2883 or send an email to bidemi@bidemimark-mordi.com. Don't forget that when you discover your purpose, you will live powerful.